Good evening. This is Rabbi Chaim Brovender Parsha Shiur of the WebYeshiva, and we're going to learn about Phinehas today. This shiur is dedicated L'Refuah Shlema Avur Noam Ephraim ben Yifat. Noam Ephraim L'Refuah Shlema Yibirtzeh Hashem. The story begins at the end of the parsha of Balak and continues into the beginning of the parasha of Phinehas, which is also probably meaningful. But we'll think about that as we go through the material. The first pasuk Aleph, Vayeshev Yisrael b'Shittim. Shittim, Rashi says, Tach Shema. It's just the name of a place. Don't look further than that. So Vayeshev Yisrael b'Shittim means it's a new story about a new place. Vayachel ha'am, and the people, the nation began liznot el benot Moab, to have illicit sexual relations with the daughters of Moab. Rashi explains, al yedei atzat Bil'am. Al yedei atzat Bil'am. This was what Bil'am. This was Bil'am's advice to Balak. So you have to remember, Balak came to Bil'am and asked him to curse the Bnei Yisrael. He had heard, apparently, that Bil'am was good at those kinds of things. Bil'am was a Navi of some sort. It's always difficult to know exactly what sort of Navi he was. Usually Navi implies divine approval. In this case, Bil'am exhibited a lack of divine approval. He says, so he was not able to do what Balak wanted him to do, was not able to do that. But at the end, it would seem, at least from the Gemara, Kede'ita b'chelek. You see the Rashi? She says, Kede'ita b'chelek, as it says in the chapter called Chelek at the end of Sanhedrin. So we see that this story, the story that's about to be told, is a continuation of the previous story. In the previous story, there was divine intervention which prevented Bil'am from accomplishing what he thought he would be able to accomplish, what he thought he was granted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the reason that Bil'am was willing to defy the divine instruction. God said to Bil'am, don't go, but he went. And there was the story with the donkey, and the donkey said, I also don't want to go. But Bil'am went. In any event, in other words, Bil'am thought about himself as having been granted a certain kind of authority, which is the way with distinguishing that Moshe Rabbeinu thought, after all, Moshe Rabbeinu thought about himself. Moshe Rabbeinu realized that since HaKadosh Baruch Hu appointed him to be the defense attorney, so to speak, for Am Yisrael, his ability was unlimited in that area. So that even if HaKadosh Baruch Hu announced that he was going to do away with Am Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu could still protect them. He could still give them his try to provide them with defense. So finally, Bil'am, in order to kind of correct the impression that was being left that he was without any resources, that he was going to lose his ability and his credibility, told Balak that he has a way. He knows what he could do, and that's what Rashi is referring to. Al Yedei Atzat Bilam. It was Bilam who gave him this idea that if he said to the Midianite women, the Jewish people of Israel, fall prey to them. So then, in Pasuk Bet, Vatikra la'am lizboach Elohehen, vayochal ha'am vayishtachavu Elohehem. Vatikrina la'am lizboach Elohehem. They called to the people of Israel lizboach, to give sacrifices to those gods. Sacrifices itself was something that was commonly accepted, something that was reasonable, and so it may be that they were confused in the process of who they were giving these korbanot to. Vayochal ha'am, vayishtachavu le'Elohehem, vayochal, part of the act of sacrifice, and vayishtachavu, they bowed down. They bowed down. Vayishtachavu le'Elohehem, Rashi says, kishetakaf Yitzro alav, v'omer, omer la hashmi'i, v'hi motzeit lo demut pa'or. It says, just one second. He says, Yeshiva Yitzro, when he became interested in the girls, he became a slave to his own inclinations. And he said to her, Hashmi'i li, listen to me. He, in other words, come to me, be with me. He motzi'ah lo demut pa'or mecheka. She takes out of her bosom a little statue of the god called Pa'or mecheka from her bosom. Va'omra lo, Omra ishtachavel hazeh. Prove that you really are with me. Bow down, bow down. Pasuk Gimel, vayitzamed Yisrael leBaal Pa'or. As a result, there was a kind of cleaving of Bnei Yisrael to Baal Pa'or. They were gone. Vayichar af Hashem v'Yisrael, and God was angry with Yisrael, so that his Bilam, unable to prophesy the people of Israel away, but he was able to defeat them in a kind of a military action that had to do with the women seducing them to Avodah Zarah, and that was something that was unforgivable. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, we're in Pasuk Daled. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, kach et kol rashei ha'am, v'hoka otam LaHashem, neged Hashemesh, v'yashov charon af Hashem v'Yisrael. So Hashem says to Moshe, I don't want this to go on forever. Kach et kol rashei ha'am, take all the leaders of the people, v'hoka otam, and you'll make everybody will know that you're punishing them. We'll see what Rashi says in a minute. V'hoka otam LaHashem, neged Hashemesh, out in the open, where the sun is shining. V'yashov charon af Hashem, and the anger of Hashem against Yisrael will somehow be reduced. Be reduced. So Pasuk Daled in Rashi, Daled, kach et kol rashei ha'am, lishpot et ha'ovdim lefa'or, take them all and they will become the judges. for the people who serve or Volkaotam et ha'ovdim. Rashi reads it a little differently. He says, take these leaders and make them into a Beit Din, and then they would punish the ones who served Pa'or. And then he explains the word Volka, he tliya. Volka is tliya. Let's skip the rest of that Rashi. Neged Hashemesh. Le'en kol. Everybody can see what you're doing. Or Medrash Agada. And the Medrash says, Hashemesh modia et ha'choteim ha'anan nikpal michenegdo v'achama haya horeg shnayim. Sorry, neged Hashemesh ha'anan nikpal michenegdo v'achama, and the sun zorachet alav. Okay, Mul Hashemesh means that the sun was on these dead bodies, and everybody knew what the issue was. Now we're up to pasuk Hey. Vayomem Moshe Shovtei Yisrael. So there's something going on. Vayomem Moshe Shovtei Yisrael, the judges of Israel, Hirgu ish anashav hanitzmadim lebal pa'or. So what Rashi is saying, what the Chumash is saying is that there was a group of people that was involved with Moshe Rabbeinu in solving this problem. And the way they were going to solve the problem, Vayomem Moshe el Shoftei Yisrael, to the judges in Israel, the judges that he just appointed, Hirgu ish anashim hanitzmadim lebal pa'or. The time has come to take a stand. And we have to take a stand against the people who accepted Pa'or and the worship of Pa'or. That's Pasuk Hey. Pasuk Hey, Hirgu ish anashav, Rashi says, Kol echad ve'echad midayanei Yisrael, all the dayanim in Yisrael, haya horeg shnayim, everybody would kill two people. Midayanei Yisrael, Shmone Ribo Ushmonet Alafim Kideita B'Sanhedrin. And there were a lot of them. And so they managed to stem the tide in this way. The people who were with Moshe Rabbeinu were killing the people who were against God and then against Pa'or. So we say, and we stop here for a moment, we have a story. And the story is that Bnei Yisrael went off. They were idolatrous. This was very similar to the Egel HaZahav, which was also clearly an idolatrous statement. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu, in the case of the Egel HaZahav and the golden calf, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu that it's over. Bnei Yisrael will not be reappointed as the nation of God. Moshe Rabbeinu prayed for their salvation. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you can save them. This is what you do. You take the judges. Everybody kills two people who are serving Pa'or. And in that way, all the people who deserve to be punished will be punished, and it'll be over. Let's see, Pasuk Hey. Vayomem Moshe, Pasuk Hey, Vayomem Moshe el Shoftei Yisrael, Hirgu ish anashav, hanitzmadim lebal Pa'or. Nitzmadim lebal Pa'or. So there was a committee of murderous judges that were in charge, and that's sort of the end of the story. That's sort of the end of the story. God promised. Pasuk Dalet. V'yom Hashem el Moshe kach et kol rashei ha'am v'hoka otam Hashem neged Hashemesh v'yashov charod af Hashem miYisrael. And God's anger will be assuaged. Bnei Yisrael will no longer be under this threat of tremendous punishment. So this is also kind of the end of the story. It's over, it would seem. And yet, it continues. The story continues. In fact, the story becomes intense in Pasuk Vav. V'hinei ish mibnei Yisrael, ish, unnamed. I mean, people who know Tanakh know that that's kind of insulting when you introduce a character and he doesn't have a name. Hinei ish mibnei Yisrael, ba. Hayakrev el achiv et hamidyanit le'nei Moshe le'nei kol adat b'nei Yisrael. He came and he did whatever sexual activity he had with a Midianite woman. Le'nei kol adat b'nei Yisrael. V'hem bochim petach ol moed. They were all crying. Petach ol moed. Rashi says, Hinei ish b'nei Yisrael ba. Nitkabtzu shivto shel Shimon etzel Zimri. The tribe of Shimon came to Zimri, who was the Nasi. Shahaya Nasi Shalahem, he was their prince. Amrulo, anu nidonim b'mita. Va'ata yoshev. He says, we're going to be killed, and you're like just sitting there and doing nothing, having a good time. K'di'itza it says in the Gemara in Sanhedrin. Et HaMidyanit, because Bibatsur, the name comes up in the beginning of the parsha of Pinchas. Beginning of the parsha of Pinchas. Hema Bochim. Hema Bochim, remember, if we look at Pasuk Vav, Hema Bochim, Petach Or Moed. All going to be killed. I mean, they're all crying. Hema Bochim. Rashi says, Nit'alma mimenu. Hema Bochim nit'alma mimenu halacha. Nit'alma mimenu halacha. So Rashi says, why were they crying? What do you mean? I mean, let them fight, let them get killed, let them do. I mean, it's over. The story is over. Why are they crying? So there's a new story which Rashi introduces to us with these words: Nitalma mimenu halacha. Moshe Rabbeinu forgot a halacha. Forgot, he didn't know it. What's the halacha that he forgot? Kol haboel aramit. Kanaim pogimbo, that if somebody has sexual relations with a non-Jewish woman, Kanaim, the zealous ones, are able to kill him. Ya'u kulam bibchiya. They all cried. Ve'egel amad Moshe keneged shishim rabo. When they built the Egel, there were 600,000 of them that were going in the wrong direction, and Moshe Rabbeinu stood up to them. Shene'emar, and that's what the pasuk means when it says, "Vayitchu ad asher dak." They broke up the egel until it was just sand. It turned into sand. Kan rafu yadav, and here he didn't know what to do. They were all crying. Elakadei sheyavo Pinchas v'yitol et ha'ra'ui lo. But it was all in order that Pinchas should come and take what he deserved. So what does Rashi tell us? Rashi says there's something wrong with the story. Why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu know what to do? Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell him what to do? It's very similar to hitting the rock to get the water out, and not just talking to the rock. We know that the Sefer Ikarim We know that the Sefer Karim talks about hitting of the rock. Instead of talking to the rock, he said, that's not the transgression at all. The transgression is that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't seem to be able to assume a position of leadership. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to react. Maybe he didn't know how to react. Moshe Rabbeinu was the leader of Am Yisrael, designated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, given the authority to protect the people. Maybe he didn't know what to do. So that was the chait. That was the chait that removed Moshe Rabbeinu ultimately from the leadership of Bnei Yisrael going into Eretz Yisrael. And here, Rashi says something similar is going on. Here there was a tragedy. Bnei Yisrael acted poorly. Bilam gave advice. It was all, Moshe Rabbeinu should have done something. If the answer to the problem was to kill the people who were involved, then Moshe Rabbeinu should have led that. But it says, Vayar Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, Vayakom mitoch ha'ida, v'yikach Roma b'yadayah. Here comes Pinchas. What is Pinchas? Vayar Pinchas. Rashi says, Vayar Pinchas, Ra'ah ma'aseh v'nizkar halacha. He saw what was going on, and he remembered the halacha that Moshe Rabbeinu was taught. You imagine Moshe Rabbeinu is standing there, he doesn't know what to do. And Pinchas says, well, I remember shiur you gave. That 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 20 years ago, I remember that shiur. Ra'ah ma'aseh v'nizkar halacha. Pinchas, who taught him the halacha? Obviously Moshe Rabbeinu, Amar lo leMoshe, v'kublani mimcha. He said to Moshe Rabbeinu, I received from you the following instruction. When you see this kind of tragic event, you have to do away with the people involved. Amarlo karyana de ikarta iula ave parvanka. Parvanka is apparently a Persian word that means a shaliach, a messenger. Amarlo karyana de ikarta, one who read the letter, he should be the shaliach to carry it out. So in other words, if you could imagine Pinchas being appointed to do the job that Moshe Rabbeinu might have done, that's what the words Karyana Digarda Yilave Parvanka mean. You're the one, you're the chosen one, you're the one who remembers the halacha, you're the one who could change the reality, because Moshe Rabbeinu, according to the Sefer Karim, Moshe Rabbeinu was not able at that time to establish his leadership or to reestablish his leadership. And the Sefer Karim says that the same thing is true about Yoshua ben Nun versus Moshe Rabbeinu. Yoshua ben Nun, when they had the battle of the Ai against the Ai, Yeshua realized that they wouldn't be able to finish the battle by the end of the day. They would lose. And so Yeshua ben Nun, without consulting, without running back to his headquarters, without trying to find out, advice from the various advice givers that are always around, he said, Shemesh b'givon dom, v'yareach b'emek ayalon, which means the sun should stop and the moon should stop in their place. The light that we have now to continue fighting, that light should continue. So according to the Sefer Karim, Yoshua ben Nun showed real leadership. And Moshe Rabbeinu on these two occasions did not show leadership. And this idea is, again, in the Sefer Karim is quoted in the Orach Chaim on the parsha of Valotcha, I think. Yeah. So we see from Rashi's not afraid to say it, that Moshe Rabbeinu, the leader of Israel, is retiring. He's leaving his position. Amala Kayana Digarta Yama Parvanko. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was able to say to Pinchas, you're the person. You're the person who is able to make this decision. Miyad. Miyad, Rashi says, Vayikach Romach biyado. He took the spear in his hand and he went out to do what he was supposed to do. Here we have Pasuk Chet. ויבוא אחר איש ישראל אל הקובה וידקור את שניהם, את איש ישראל ואת האישה אל קובתה, ותעצר המגפה. So here Pinchas went, he killed him, he killed her, he used the spear. ותעצר המגפה, and it was over. Al b'nei Yisrael. It came to an end. It came to an end. One more pasuk. ויהיו המתים במגפה 24,000. 24,000. Okay. So that's the end of that story. That's the end of the story, but not quite the end. וידבר השם אל משה לאמור. This is the beginning of the parsha of Phinchas, the parsha, our parsha this week. Pasuk Yud Aleph. Phinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. He has a name. Phinchas ben Elazar. We know him. We know that he's Phinchas ben Elazar, ben Aaron HaKohen. Yeshivit Chamati. Calm down, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, metaphorically speaking, Be'al b'nei Yisrael, from being against the people of Israel, B'kano et kinati b'tocham. Somehow he made it right. He made something wrong into something right. V'lo kiliti et b'nei Yisrael b'kinati, and I did not do away with them. L'chein emor, one more pasuk. Therefore, I say, I will give him my covenant of peace. Et briti shalom. Rashi. Pasuk Yud Aleph. Phinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. So Rashi, who doesn't understand why his name is so prominent, we know him. We know Phinchas. Since the other tribes would embarrass him, insult him. Ben Puti. Did you see this guy walking around? He's Ben Puti. He's the son of Puti. Why do I call his father Puti? Shepitem et Avi Imo, the father of his mother, fattened the calves of Avodah Zarah, and he sent them to Avodah Zarah. Baharag, in the sea, Shevet Israel, and then he went and he killed one of the people, one of the princes of Israel. Lefikach ba'hakatuv v'yichaso achar Aaron. And therefore, the Torah took the trouble to defend him and say that he was really the son. He was actually the son of Aaron. Okay, we'll get back to that. Bekano et kinati, benikmo et nikmati. He was zealous about my honor. Kitzapo et haketzev shaya li kitzop. I somehow reduced the anger that I was dealing with Bnei Yisrael with. Kol lashon kin'ah hu hamitchare linkom nikmat davar. That's what the word kin'ah, Any use of the word kinah means that you're preventing something from happening. Okay? Et Briti Shalom, the last thing that we give him not only a name, not only honor for doing what he did, but as a Kohen, he's going to get Et Briti Shalom. Briti Shalom, Rashi said, Shetehelo Lebrit Shalom. It'll be a covenant of Shalom, of peace. Ka'adam HaMachzik Tova. Somebody who owes you something. So what I think that Briti Shalom means that you know that the Kohanim were charged with Birkat Kohanim, with blessing Bnei Yisrael on different occasions. And the blessing that they were given was a blessing of Shalom. And the fact that Phinehas did what he did, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted us to know that he was not being excluded from the bracha of Shalom, that he was included, even if it took a separate Brit to include him. So the question that we might ask is, what's exactly going on? We go through it again. Bilam gave advice to Balak, and they really caused a tremendous disturbance in Bnei Israel, which ended up with thousands of people dying in the pestilence that was brought upon them because they were seduced into idolatry. But the main part of the story is that Moshe Rabbeinu was unable to take a stand against this reality. He was unable to go to Bnei Israel and say, stop what you're doing, otherwise things will be terrible. He was unable to plead with God about the future of Bnei Israel. All he was able to do was validate Phinehas' understanding of the lesson that he learned from Moshe Rabbeinu, that Boelet Aramit, that if somebody has sexual relations with a non-Jewish woman, Kanaim, Hogim, both people who are in the category of Kanaim, of zealots, they can take it upon themselves to kill them. So it's something that is not part of the legal structure, the law, but it's something that can happen and should happen and would happen. But it did not happen to Moshe Rabbeinu. So it seems to me that the book of, much of the material in the book of Bamidbar is about Bnei Yisrael.
Vayikra.
Like Bamidbar is Bnei Yisrael separating themselves from the authority of Moshe Rabbeinu. In other words, Bnei Yisrael had to learn before Moshe Rabbeinu physically died that they could actually live without Moshe Rabbeinu. They could have a leadership that was not on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu, but was sufficient in order to, you see these simanim, the idea that there was somebody, Phinehas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, who knew the Shiur, he knew the halacha, but Moshe Rabbeinu seems to have ignored the halacha or didn't promote the fact that he knew the halacha, to show that even somebody who doesn't have the competence in Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu had, that's Phinehas. Phinehas, certainly, we have no reason to imagine that he had any kind of semblance to Moshe Rabbeinu. But in this particular case, the leadership of Am Yisrael, the plea that what Bnei Israel had to do in order to return themselves to the good graces of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then the pleading that had to be done to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the benefit of Bnei Israel could be done by Phinehas. By Phinehas, and this was a matter of such significance that HaKadosh Baruch Hu returned to him Riti Shalom. In other words, you might think that being in charge of a mass murder of the Jewish people who were involved with a Midianite woman, you might think that involvement precluded the kahuna. But Riti Shalom means that in spite of the reasonableness of that position, in the case of Phinehas, who taught the Bnei Israel this great lesson, that they had a right to existence even beyond Moshe Rabbeinu, beyond the halachot that some people forgot and other people remembered. Beyond all of that, there was existence for Am Yisrael. They would continue to exist under the protection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because they would be able to foster real, it's not believing. Okay. Have a good Shabbos.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom, brother.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.